Hello everyone and welcome to the Peppercorn Palette. My name is Julia and this is a series where we attempt to veganize all of Claire Saffitz Dessert Person cookbook. Today we are going to be making these brown butter and sage sablés. Sables? Maybe I should learn how to pronounce this cookie first. Hold on. Okay, I was very close. It is a French cookie and it is pronounced sablé. Sablé. And apparently it literally translates to sandy, which is exactly how Claire describes this cookie. I love the sandy, dissolving texture of the traditional sablé cookies, like a lighter, more tender shortbread. They look really easy to make, and I don't know if I've ever had a sablé before, so excited to try them. Let's get started. Okay, so the first step is to, in a small saucepan, combine the butter and sage and cook over a medium heat. So it calls for 2 sticks of unsalted butter. I feel like I said butter really weird. Butter. Veganize that. I'm just going to use vegan butter. This is the one I'm using, Earth Balance. It comes in sticks too, but the store that I had didn't have it, so we're just going to weigh it out. This is also salted already. I don't know. 99% of the time when a recipe calls for unsalted butter, I use salted butter anyway, and it always turns out fine. I will probably just, this recipe does call for the addition of a teaspoon of salt. I will probably just omit that since the butter is already salty. So 8 ounces of butter. A little trick if you have to weigh something out from a container, what you can do is, rather than putting your bowl or whatever on top of the scale and then adding into it until you get to the amount of ounces, you can just put the container that you're taking from right on the scale, and then it will come up with the negative amount, if that makes sense. So you can just like keep taking from it and putting it into your other, whatever container you need it to be in, until you get to the negative amount that you need. So I'm looking for negative 8 ounces on my scale. Now it calls for 4 large, fresh, leafy sage sprigs. Now, is this a sprig of sage or is this a sprig of sage? Okay, I googled it because I was really unsure, and apparently this is a sprig of sage, which, I don't know, to me that's a very inaccurate measurement because like they vary so much. Well, I don't know, maybe they, like this one's so little, although that's why I guess she does say 4 large fresh leafy sprigs. All right, well, I'm gonna just put all the sage in there then. Okay, so we have it all in our pot and it says to cook over medium-low heat. All right, so my butter is brown. This is actually my second round. I accidentally burnt the first batch. Yeah, I just like, it was looking good and then I just let it go a little too far and the sage got like totally brown. The butter got to be like a really dirty, gross brown color, and it smelled burnt. It smelled really bad. Yeah, so just be careful, keep an eye on it. This one looks good. The butter is a darker color than it was when it started, but it's not like that ugly, disgusting brown color. And the sage should still be green. but it is like fried and crispy. So learn from my mistake and don't burn your butter. Vegan butter isn't going to brown in the exact same way as regular butter, and every vegan butter performs a little bit differently. So I've used vegan butters where you do actually see some brown bits in it, like Claire describes for regular butter, but some it will just kind of foam a lot and it'll get like a little bit darker of a color. So yeah, I would say for the most part, what you really want to keep an eye on is the sage. This looks perfect. I'm going to pour it into my mixing bowl. Just to pluck out the sage, I'm actually just going to strain it just because some of the sage has broken up a little bit. So just to make sure. And then she says to set the sage aside for later. Now she says to set the butter aside to cool at room temperature, but not to let it harden. So next, Claire says to whisk together the flour, corn, starch, and salt, which I'm not going to add salt because, like I said, my butter is salted already. All right, so we need 8 ounces of flour or 1 3/4 cups. I prefer to measure things because it's just way more accurate, because especially flour, it like clumps, right? So a cup of flour that's like freshly sifted could be so different from like a flour that you're just taking straight from the pack, right? That might be like really compacted. It's just like not that accurate. Most cookbooks, including Claire's, will have the measurements in grams or ounces and whatnot. So a kitchen scale is a really cheap and useful tool to have in the kitchen, so I would recommend getting one if you don't have one. And now we have 1.2 ounces of cornstarch or 1/4 cup. We're gonna whisk these guys together with the world's smallest whisk. All right, once that is whisked, we're gonna set that aside. So it says to come back to our butter, but it is not yet cooled. It's still very hot. She says to it smells really good. It's still warm. She says to speed it up. You can put it over an ice bath, but you want to be careful not to let it harden. That seems like so much work, and I don't have another bowl, so I'm gonna pop it into the fridge for a little bit and just keep an eye on it and not let it harden. Right, we are back. I did end up actually putting this in the freezer because it was taking so long to cool down. But yeah, it started to solidify a little bit, but not harden, which I think is what we want. Claire says that it is important to let it cool completely because that is what creates the sandy texture. So I think we're good now. While I was letting it cool, I went ahead and prepared the sugar and the lemon zest. So you need 5.3 ounces of granulated sugar and a teaspoon of lemon zest. And so now Claire says to add the sugar and the lemon into the bowl of butter, and we are going to mix it until combined for about 2 minutes. You can use your stand mixer. I'm going to use my hand mixer today because I feel like I don't use her a lot, and she's so pretty. Look at her. I've been beating for about 2 minutes, and it has gotten very pale in color, which is how Claire says it should look. I'm going to scrape down the sides. My smiley face spatula. And now she says to add the egg yolks and vanilla. So another thing that I prepared while my butter was cooling is the vegan egg yolks. Today, to replace the egg yolk, we will be using this egg replacer powder. On the back, it gives instructions on how to replace a whole egg as well as an egg white or an egg yolk. So the instructions for the egg yolk is 1.5 teaspoons of egg replacer with 1 tablespoon of water. The recipe calls for 2 egg yolks, so I just did 3 teaspoons of egg replacer or 1 tablespoon, and then 2 tablespoons of water. You just let it sit with the water and it gets really thick. So I'm just gonna scrape all this out of here and add it into our butter and sugar mixture. And then the last ingredient is 2 teaspoons of vanilla, which I'm just gonna eyeball. Okay, now Claire says to beat this for another 30 seconds, just until combined. Now we're going to add the dry ingredients. She says to add it all at once. Then on low speed, we're going to just mix the wet and the dry ingredients until just incorporated. Okay, this is what my dough looks like. It looks quite crumbly, but I think it is going to come together just fine. I'm going to scrape down the sides and fold it, making sure that all of the mixture is well combined. By the way, a benefit of vegan baking is you can taste things that have egg in it without worrying about salmonella. Now it's time to form the dough into logs. Claire says to divide the dough in half and to put each half on a 10-inch long sheet of parchment paper. I ran out of parchment paper and then I went to the store and they also didn't have any more. So Claire says to wrap it in parchment paper and then plastic wrap around that, but we're gonna just skip the parchment paper step and just use saran. All right, so now we're just gonna, what are we doing? Should be an 8-inch cylinder. What is 8 inches? It's almost 8 inches. Okay, I don't know. Did I do a good job? Is there gonna be a flat side? I feel like her cookies are pretty round. All right, well, we haven't gotten to that part yet. Maybe we're gonna roll it later. Okay, so that's one. I'm sorry, but 8 inches is fucking huge. Like, what are you gonna do with that? I mean, impressed, but could not be me. Okay, so we've got our 2 logs, and now Claire says to refrigerate until the dough is firm at least 2 hours. See y'all in 2 hours. While the logs are in the fridge, I'm going to make our sage sugar mixture that is going to go around the outside of the cookie. So the recipe calls for demerara sugar. I could not find that at the store, so I'm going to be using turbinado sugar. I looked up the difference and they're very subtly different. I think turbinado sugar has just like slightly more of a molasses flavor, which I think sounds pretty good, and it's like naturally occurring, which is cool. Really what I think the important part is that you use a sugar that has large sugar crystals so that you get that kind of crunchy texture around the outside of the cookie. Whatever you can find like that should work just fine. The recipe calls for a 1/2 cup of demerara sugar, or in our case, turbinado sugar, but I'm actually only going to bake up one of the logs. You can actually freeze the logs for up to 2 months. One log makes 18 cookies already, and I really don't need 36 cookies right now. So yeah, I'm just gonna make the one log and freeze the other one. So I'm gonna half the sugar mixture as well, because Claire says that if you do freeze them, then you wanna freshly fry up the sage. So when I eventually make the second log, I will make a fresh batch of the sage and sugar mixture. So I'm only going to do a 1/4 cup for now. Claire says to pluck off half of the reserved leaves and add them to the sugar. But since we are having that, we're going to do just a 1/4 of the leaves. She says that you can use the rest of the leaves for like cooking, to sprinkle on like potatoes or whatever. So I'll definitely save the rest of them. I'm going to massage the leaves into the sugar. That's what your sugar should look like with the sage. The logs have chilled for about 2 hours. It's nice and solid now. If you're gonna make both right now, then keep one in the fridge while you work on the first one. But like I said, I'm only gonna make one today, so I just popped the other one in the freezer to use at a later date. Sprinkle our sugar and sage mixture onto a clean surface. And then we're gonna roll our log into the sugar. I'm gonna just take a second to like shape it a little. Oh no. Nobody saw that. Because there is like a flat side, and in the picture her cookies don't look like they have a flat side. So I feel like I want to just round it up a little bit. All right, now we're gonna roll it into the sugar. Ooh, it's so fun. It looks so pretty. It looks like glitter on the outside. Oh, I also forgot to mention that you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and also prepare your pans. Like I said, I couldn't find parchment at the store. So ideally you want to line your pans with parchment paper, but since I don't have any, I just buttered the pan and I think it should be fine. Next, she says with a sharp knife, we're going to cut our cookies into 18 pieces. Now this knife is dull as all heck, okay? So hopefully this turns out okay still. If anybody has any suggestions for a good knife, please let me know because I need knives so badly. My technique is to cut in half and then half and then in half and then in half. I don't know how many halves that was. Basically, cut each piece in half until you get to 18 pieces because that works out really nicely. Then you will make sure that you make them all even. So they should be between 1/4 and 1/2 inch, which these look like they are. Oh, so cute. And then you're gonna space them out about 2 inches apart. All right, now these are going to go into the oven for 16 to 20 minutes. Also, if you put 2 racks in at a time, like one on a higher shelf and one on a lower shelf, you just want to rotate them halfway through. My cookies were in the oven for about 16 minutes and they look perfect. I am so happy with them. I think they're so cute. I just love how the sugar on the outside looks like glitter. Oh, they're so pretty. Okay, I'm dying to try one. Oh yeah. Such a simple recipe, but such a complex flavor. It tastes a lot like a basic kind of butter shortbread cookie, but it has that really nice sandy texture, and those notes from the sage and the brown butter just make it so much more interesting to eat than a basic shortbread cookie. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let me know if you try this recipe. Make sure you buy Claire's cookbook, and I hope that you subscribe and come back to see what recipe we are going to veganize next. And I guess I'll see you then. Bye.